Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hi there, I'm Deven McClure, a games journalist that's worked places like Screen Rant and Polygon, and I've recently gone freelance. And I'm here today to talk about Animal Crossing Wild World, which is my very favorite installment in the Animal Crossing series. With the absolutely smashing success that was Animal Crossing New Horizons, which went on to become the second best-selling Nintendo Switch game of all time, it's hard to imagine Animal Crossing ever not being a part of the main gaming zeitgeist. But it used to be much less popular and much more niche. This was definitely still the case when Animal Crossing Wild World came out. It was only the second Animal Crossing title released for Western audiences, and a lot of people had never heard of it before. But I very much had. My love affair with the game series had started one fateful day in third grade when I went over to my friend's house, who was very bossy, and she just had me run around her Animal Crossing GameCube town doing a bunch of little tasks for her. Joke's on her, though. I thought that was awesome. I loved the little tasks, and I never looked back. I still remember the day that Animal Crossing Wild World came out very vividly. It was December 5th, 2005, and all I could think about all day in my 5th grade classroom was that I was going to go home and I was going to finally get to play Animal Crossing Wild World. That dream did have to slightly wait because I learned at the ripe old age of 10 that when you order a game online, it doesn't always come the day the game comes out. It usually arrives the day after, which was heartbreaking. But I eventually, the next day, got my hands on the game, which felt like an eternity, and it enraptured me. Now, Animal Crossing is sort of a tricky concept to explain, because in a way, there's not a real point, which is also the point. Essentially, it operates on a real-time clock, seasons just like we have them in real life, and every day you log on to it and you can just do little activities around your town. Now with games like Animal Crossing New Horizons, there's obviously people who have embarked on huge outdoor landscaping projects and incredible things I could only dream of creating in the Patterns app. But Wild World was much simpler than that. You see, in the later games, starting with New Leaf, where you're the mayor, and then in New Horizons, where you're the resident representative, you have a lot more power. In the first few Animal Crossing games, you were just some guy who shows up to a town with no money and decides to live there. At the end of the day, the best way to describe the Animal Crossing series is basically like a social simulation game, which is exactly what developers were striving for when they developed the original. Director Katsuya Eguchi called the original Animal Crossing as coming from the idea of wanting a communication game, something that would encourage players to talk to each other in real life about the things they saw in the game, about trading items, while also getting to interact with the villagers who live within their Animal Crossing town. It was also meant to authentically capture the feeling of moving somewhere new and slowly becoming a part of that town. All of the incremental growth that you experience within that, whether it's becoming friends with your neighbors or seeing a tree slowly grow one day to the next. Something that's always given the Animal Crossing series a very big place in my heart is the ultimate sense of leisure and freedom that it gives the player. It does give you goals that you can pursue, like paying off your house debt to Tom Nook and filling up the museum with bugs and fish and fossils, but it doesn't make you do any of that. In fact, if you wanted to, you never had to finish any of the goals it sets up for you. You can just live your day-to-day life, catching fish and bugs without a care in the world. Part of why Wild World in particular is so special to me is how well it captures this feeling compared to all of the other games. There's not yet pressure of being a mayor or a resident representative, but at the same time, it was also by no means simplistic. It made improvements on the original GameCube version by adding in new features, new depth of lore for the NPC characters, and the game being on Nintendo DS completely changed how one interacted with the game. For starters, you could take your town anywhere, meaning that every time I went on a family trip from the time it was released onward, that was coming with me. It also quite literally changed the perspective of the game. 2 screens meant that you could now see the sky, which at the time was revolutionary in the Animal Crossing series. The entire top half of the DS was dedicated to the sky, which in turn introduced the floating presence that fans have come to know. It also brought in one of my personal favorite additions to the game that I really, really hoped that they would bring back for New Horizons, and they never have, which is the observatory on the top floor of the museum. The observatory is run by Celeste, the brother of the owl that runs the museum, Blathers. And in it, you can look through her big telescope and make your own constellations. After you've made them, they'll appear in the sky throughout the year based on their position. It's awesome. I know it sounds like such a small thing, but seeing a little Pac-Man that I made when I was in 5th grade appear in the sky again and think, oh, it's Pac-Man constellation season. It just hit different. Just a few floors down from the observatory is another addition to Wild World that I love so much. In the basement of the museum is the Roost, which is a small coffee shop run by a pigeon named Brewster. The general routine of the Roost is very simple. You just show up every day, you can pay 200 bells for a cup of coffee, which is honestly a really good deal, and slowly become friends with this standoffish pigeon. If you keep at it, eventually he'll offer to put a special ingredient in your coffee for you. Pigeon milk, which is kind of unsettling, but for some reason, for 10-year-old me, I was really striving to get that pigeon milk in my latte. It just felt like another one of those things that was seeing your incremental progress pay off. It's not just you alone in the cafe either. It's kind of like a community hub for your town. Every Saturday, it's where KK Slider, the dog musician, will play one of his groovy tunes and offer you a bootleg of it. And depending what time you go, you can run into different special NPCs, like the mail woman before her shift starts, or the otter who is always trying to sell you really overpriced insurance, which is another real NPC in the game. NPCs in general are much more of a focus in Wild World than they were in the GameCube version. You knew little bits and bobs about them, but never anything that concrete, where Wild World added what I've heard called a few different things. I've heard some people call it story events, I've heard some call it drama, whatever you want to call it. It was special dialogue that you could unlock with NPCs as you got to know them better and learn a little bit of their backstory. So you learn about how one of the Able sisters used to be really good friends with Tom Nook, but they became estranged. Or how Tom Nook and Red used to be in business together, but Red almost cost him everything. And in turn, this just made the entire world feel so much more alive. And it also gave you a lot more empathy for characters that today people like to talk about being evil, like Tom Nook. Which I would just like to say, on the record, Tom Nook canonically donates 90% of his earnings to the orphanage where he adopted Timmy and Tommy, so don't come at me with that. Anyway, not only were relationships with NPCs heightened in Wild World, but also with your fellow neighbor. The dialogue is some of the most entertaining, I think, of any Animal Crossing game, especially compared to entries like New Horizons, where they do still make me laugh sometimes, but they used to be straight up mean to you. Like, for example, I was recently revisiting Wild World for this podcast and doing the opening tutorial. I was doing jobs for Tom Nook, and I went to one of my new neighbors, Hopper, and I said, "Hey, I have a carpet for you." And he said, "I bet you don't even know what a carpet is." Fair enough, Hopper. So I sent him a letter to try to make nice. He mailed me back and said, "Pay attention, Deven. Who are you trying to impress with that letter? You can kill time doing things like basketball. Hopper." He's not having any of it, and it's so funny to me. And it goes back once again to what I said about making incremental progress. I know there's going to be a day when Hopper does openly like me. I already slightly impressed him by being able to catch a loach before him. But the intermediary bit to get there is a long road, which makes it even more fulfilling. Though you could see changes in how your mean neighbor would maybe slightly get nicer to you over time in Animal Crossing for the GameCube, in Wild World it was much more visible, because the game introduced the villager photo system, which still exists today, although they took it out in City Folk for some reason. I don't know why they did that. Anyway, basically, when you had reached a high enough friendship with one of your neighbors, they would give you this little speech about how dear you are to them, and then give you their portrait, and on the back of it, it would have some little quote by them. It's another one of those really small but impactful things that Wild World did so well. When I finally earned my favorite neighbor's photograph, I felt like I had made it. Not only did the people around you feel more actualized, but you did too. The customization of your own character became a much bigger thing in Wild World. You could finally change your hair, which again sounds tiny, But in the original GameCube version, you were just stuck with whatever hair you got from the dialogue options you picked on the train on your way there. And that was just you. Here, you could go to Shampoodle, and it would still be the same kind of cryptic questions thing, although people put guides out online for how to get the hair you wanted. But being able to actually change your appearance in that way was huge. The same is true for the bits of accessories that were added to the Able sisters. You could start buying hats and sunglasses and face masks, and there was so much more to do to make your character feel like you. There was also a lot more you could do to make your town feel like your own. Even though you still couldn't control things like where buildings were placed or put public works projects outside like in later games, you could put patterns on the ground. Of course, for anyone who's played New Horizons, you'll probably be very familiar with this concept, as custom pathing is a really big part of island aesthetics, but back then you had much fewer pattern slots and couldn't really share them online. But even still, the ability to say, you know what, I'm gonna put some little rocks on the ground right here to make a tiny pathway, was just incredible. I remember visiting other people's towns in Wild World and being so impressed that they had transformed the entire place with a pattern that made their ground look like gingerbread or gingham print. It made the game lag to hell and back, for sure, but it was still really cool to see. Which, of course, brings me to the very biggest evolution Wild World brought from its predecessor: online play. In the GameCube version, there were ways to trade objects in the game, where you could get a special code from Tom Nook and then give that code to your friend. And if you brought your memory card over to your friend's house, you could visit their town. But the DS meant Wi-Fi capabilities that could be used to visit anyone's town from anywhere. It completely changed the game and completely amped up that communication aspect developers wanted so much. I was a frequent forum goer back in the day. Specifically, if you were as well, I was on AnimalCrossingCommunity.com. I know there were a lot of different ones, but a lot of it remained the same. People would talk in threads about trading items, or there were even whole accounts that were dedicated to item giveaways, which to this day I still don't know how that was profitable for Frito-Lay, but I digress. But you had these whole groups of people banding together to say, oh, you need this fruit? I'll bring this fruit over to you. Or, oh, you need some extra bells? Let me just bring you some royal crowns and you can sell them. It was a community like no other because everyone there was doing things their own way and wanting to help each other with whatever those individual goals were. You weren't rewarded for trading in any way, but everyone just wanted each other to live their best village life. So much of Wild World can be summed up with, it's the little things. Whether it's the tiny adjustments made between the first and second entry, or something like seeing your constellation in the sky or getting a new hat. There were just so many little things that made it feel like coming home, like you're seeing old friends. There was never truly anything to worry about in Animal Crossing. Sure, you might be drowning in debt, but it also accrues zero interest, and the guy who made you the loan doesn't even care if you pay it back. There's no timers, there's no stress, you can't die. It's just leisure. Leisure in its purest form, and community in its purest form, both inside the game and out of it. And that's why Animal Crossing Wild World has such a special place in my heart. If you've never played it and you happen to still have a Nintendo DS, I can't recommend it enough. If you've enjoyed listening to me blab about Animal Crossing, I tend to do a lot of that. You can find a lot of my highlighted writing pieces and what I'm up to now on my website, which is devenmcclure.com, Deven spelled with an E-N. Or you can catch me on socials, where basically everywhere I'm Lil, like L-I-L, _ kombucha, like the beverage a lot of people really don't like. Thanks so much for listening, y'all, and as always, happy gaming.
Hey, you there! This is Nomad speaking. If you love retro video games and you're itching for some nostalgia, check out the Retro Wildlands podcast. In each episode, I'll use game music and sound to pull you into the gaming experience while I share my own thoughts and maybe a few memories. It's a great way to relive one of your favorite games or learn about a new one. Check out the Retro Wildlands podcast at superpodnetwork.com or wherever you listen to your podcast.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.